what is our purpose at the end of the day?
Okay.
And it is as simple as to serve and protect.
Welcome back to the Talk Midland podcast. My name is Logan Richetti. Today I have Scott Holzinger running for Midland County Sheriff.
Thanks for having me, Logan. Happy to be here.
And you're a baseball guy.
I am a baseball guy.
Who's your team?
Tigers.
Boom. Tigers are having a hell of a start to this year.
Yeah, yep. Had a little 3-game skid there that they cleaned up yesterday with a 9th inning comeback. So, but off to a great start.
Well, I got the girls out to the Loons this weekend for the first time, but it was still a little cold.
Yeah, Michigan weather, right?
Yeah.
80 one day and 45 the next. So
driving over to the stadium, walking into the stadium, walking out of the stadium, I felt safe the whole time. That's because Midland is a beautiful place to live. And it's because we have people like you that protect us.
Appreciate that.
We appreciate you. And I appreciate you running for sheriff. Why are you running for sheriff for Midland County? And what does that look like?
So I've been with the sheriff's office for 21 years, and I'll take it back even before that. So my late grandfather, DeWitt Fillmore, worked for the sheriff's office. He was killed by a drunk driver in a crash in 1976.
Yes.
Unfortunately, I was never able to meet him. However, through years of stories and aspirations that he had, kind of led me to this field in the first place. And one of the things my family has talked about through the years is the ultimate goal for him was to run for sheriff of Midland County. And it's bittersweet to be in this position. And this has always been my goal in my career in law enforcement. Started in the courts in 2003. As soon as I graduated from college, I was fortunate to be hired by John Reeder, was promoted to the road patrol in 2004 by then Jerry Nielsen was the sheriff at that time. Worked straight midnights for almost 10 years.
Wow.
Road patrol. Got to experience and see a lot during that time, and I promoted to the Detective Bureau by Sheriff Scott Stevenson in 2013, where I am today. So as far as the office goes, I have worked in some capacity in every division outside of animal control. So I consider myself to be a well-rounded candidate in that regard.
Wow,
So,
for sure.
as far as what that looks like, obviously the sheriff position is elected.
Okay.
Makes it a little bit different than being a police chief, whereas a chief is hired or appointed by a city board or city manager. A sheriff is elected by the people in the county in which he serves or lives. So that's what makes this a little bit different. Not a politician, so this is it's a learning curve. I enjoy people, enjoy talking to people, and it's been a fun ride so far.
Have you ever run for any office before of any kind in an election like that?
Student council in junior high, but no, this is my first time learning about campaign finance. It's crazy. It's very involved. I have a fantastic team of individuals who are helping me.
Yeah.
Ann Fillmore, someone who is deeply rooted in the Midland community, is leading the charge. Jen Lee, my wife, my mother. So I'm surrounded by great people, and we have a great team. So, but it's a learning curve for all of us. So,
well, everybody knows what it's like in the political landscape right now. It's ugly at a national level. Local level, I don't think it's too bad, but being a politician or being in politics is not for everybody. And it sounds like you're jumping into that fray because that's the means to the end to continue to serve.
yes, absolutely.
So thanks for doing that.
Yep.
And I don't say that lightly because, it's not easy to run for office. I've run campaigns before in my earlier days, and I think campaigns are very difficult. They're very stressful. You're putting yourself in a public light for scrutiny, for approval, disapproval. People are going to like you and hate you now because you're in that spotlight now, which you're doing for service, and a lot of people admire and respect that. So once again, thanks for doing it.
Appreciate that.
And the Midland County Sheriff office, in my experience, has always been really good. You know, I've always felt safe in Midland. I've dealt with some local and county police interactions with clients, and in situations like that. But by and large, I think they have a really good reputation. Is that the case?
Yes.
Okay, I thought so.
Yes.
But now there's a new sheriff coming into town. So how long is a sheriff term? Is it 4 years?
It is. It's 4 years.
Okay. And Myron Green's the current sheriff.
He is.
He's retiring.
He is retiring.
How many terms did he have?
This will be the end of this year. Will be the end of his first term.
Okay, so he was one term, and he's moving on to his next thing.
That's correct.
Okay. One of the things you said before we started, which I thought was interesting, is your approach to campaigning and to building support and building awareness of what you're trying to do is a little bit untraditional in ways, much more down to earth, grassroots, shaking hands, face to face, a little bit less of political theater.
Yes.
A lot of people respect that right now.
Yeah, and that's exactly it, Logan. I am who I am, and I consider myself to be real and authentic. And politics can certainly be volatile. We all know that. You turn on the TV, it's left or right, and that's just not anything I'm real interested in. The sheriff, if elected, well, the current sheriff, Myron Green, he represents and serves all people, right, left. It doesn't matter. So for me, it is keeping the main thing, which is the people. And that's true for our office. To go back to your question or statement about having a good reputation, which I believe we have, it's because we have great people. And again, then it's about the people we serve as well. So I want to make sure that I do this my way, that I'm comfortable with, because people can sense if you're fake and not authentic. And so that's very important to me. I've been seeking lots of advice from people that have campaigned and been part of this for a long time, because like I said, there's a learning curve. But I have to be true to myself and what I'm comfortable with. So that's why we kicked things off last week at the Sanford Lake Bar and Grill. It was a fantastic event, huge turnout. Shout out to Jamie and Corey for hosting that, and everyone that showed up is humbling. And so, yeah, a little bit different. More to come. We might do some things. Well, we haven't seen that out of a local campaign, and that's okay.
Like what?
I'll reserve that. Yeah,
more to come. Right,
more to come. We don't know if anybody else is going to get in yet, so stay tuned on that.
So a little bit of your campaign strategy depends on how much competition there is or whatnot, or how that works. But let's just keep it general with what are the challenges that Midland faces right now?
So that's a good question. It's one that's multi-tiered. So one challenge in law enforcement for Midland, for the sheriff's office, and I think law enforcement statewide and then maybe nationally, is it's tough hiring qualified people and then retaining them. Law enforcement has been in the spotlight, I think, more than ever, criticized more than ever, sometimes justified, sometimes not. And I think that is having a tough or negative impact on people who are choosing to get into the field. And so that is challenge. If I'm fortunate to be elected as your next sheriff, I want to hire the best. And we will work hard to do that and look at ways that we can do that. But that's a challenge that we have in Midland right now, is hiring and retaining and keeping people working for the sheriff's office. Regarding public things, you said it, at the beginning of this. When you walked out of the Loons game, you feel safe. And Midland is a safe place to live. We're a suburb without a city, and our crime rate is very low. The Midland Police does a fantastic job. We have Coleman, the MSP post over in Tri-City that assists us with that. And Midland is a great place to live. However, we have challenges. And one thing personally that I've seen an uptick in recently is exploitation of elderly in financial situations.
Yeah.
the cost of everything has went way up. We're seeing people move back home, move back in with grandma and grandpa, maybe borrow a little bit of money here, and then borrowing turns into taking, and then it goes from there. And we've seen a tremendous increase in those types of incidents in the county. Yeah. So that's a challenge. Midland isn't in a bubble. We have our drug issues here, like other communities. Not as bad as some other communities. We have fantastic programs through our court system with drug court, My Hope.
Is that with Beal? Judge Beal?
Yep, with Judge Beal. So those programs have helped tremendously. You had somebody on your show that is very open about his story and his recovery. I consider him a friend who went through that program, and he's a small business owner now in Midland, and he's doing a fantastic job. So, but that's still a challenge. Is if it's not one thing or one drug, it's another. And, how do we stay in front of those things and help people who need help? So those are a couple of the things I think of right off the top of my head.
Well, having been up and down the chain of command for Midland County for 21 years, which is incredible, you now have a chance to be leading the charge, leading the show. And given that opportunity, what will you do differently?
Like I said, I've had the opportunity to work for 4 different sheriffs now, starting with John Reeder and then Jerry Nielsen, Scott Stevenson, and most recently Sheriff Green, and all have had their styles, their way of doing things and putting their fingerprints on the office. And I'm certainly, if elected, going to have my style.
Yeah.
One thing, and the last 4 weeks of campaigning and meeting with the public and talking to the public, is the thing I'm hearing is relatability. And people want not our office, per se, but police in general, to continue to work on becoming more relatable. And I'll be 45 this fall, and some people are like, "You're too young to be a sheriff." So I'm going to be 45, and I think that some people are ready to see a younger generation in leadership. So there's that. But the thing I would bring is culture. I'm a big team guy. Grew up around all things sports. My life still revolves around sports. Have our first travel baseball tournament this weekend.
For the kid?
Yep. My 12-year-old son, I coach his team, Michigan Batman.
Awesome.
Yep. We kick off this weekend. It's going to be a busy summer with that, on top of campaigning and track and everything that goes with that. But the value that I put on team and being around teams and part of teams my whole life can't be understated. And the sheriff's office is a team right now. I want to have a championship culture at the sheriff's office, a place where when people come to work, they feel empowered and they feel supported and are provided with as many training and educational opportunities as possible. Because at the end of the day, if we have that, then the people we serve will benefit. So leadership through building team culture is a priority and something that I'll bring immediately to the office if I'm fortunate to win this fall.
Last year we went to the fair, and I ran into Sheriff Green and somebody else there. They had a little booth at the front. I think they were giving away stickers or something.
Yep.
And my daughter went right up to them, and she was so excited, and she got to see a positive impression of law enforcement. The more of that we can get, the better. We don't have a lot of interpersonal dynamics with the law enforcement in Midland that I know of, like some other areas of the country right now. There hasn't been any events or any problems like that. And everybody I know that's in law enforcement in Midland is awesome. But I think at a macro level, relations between law enforcement and the population just aren't as good as they have been in the past. There's been a lot of things, for better or for worse, political or not, media or not, that just have eroded against that. So anything that you guys can do to continue to build those relationships at that face-to-face level can only help, right?
Yeah, and I agree with that. And it goes back again to relatability.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, our guys and gals that work for the sheriff's office are, moms, dads, brothers, sisters, members of the community, just like you and everybody else. They get paid to do a job, but they're humans.
Sure.
And again, it goes back to relatability to me and being approachable. And, do we look at, being a little looser with, how we dress, our uniforms? No, I'm not saying guys and gals will go out on patrol wearing hoodies and joggers, but, do we look at things like that? Just modernizing a little bit in some ways, would that help with the relatability side of things? Because that's really what I'm gathering as I'm meeting more and more people over the last month is, we love the sheriff's office and love what you guys and gals bring, but we don't really understand you.
Really?
Yeah. So,
what do they mean? Yeah. What do they mean by that? When they say they don't understand you, what is it? What are they like? What's the disconnect?
What is our purpose at the end of the day? Okay. And it is as simple as to serve and protect, with the with service or serving being paramount in that, because that is what we're here to do. We're not a for-profit organization. Believe it or not, we don't have quotas.
Is that true?
It's true.
Why do you say it like that? A lot of people don't believe you?
Nah, well, the Supreme Court, yes, yeah. And the Supreme Court says we cannot have quotas. Okay. So that's a myth. We don't have quotas, okay?
Have there ever been quotas?
Not to my knowledge. Certainly not in my 21 years. We've never had quotas. You have people who, to circle back to what you just said about understanding us, you guys are just out to harass people or something like that. And that's not the case at all. The purpose of traffic enforcement, the reason that you see those patrol cars out on US 10 is to slow people down. I've seen traffic crashes, fatalities from traffic crashes where people were going 90 to 100 miles an hour, and they're an awful sight.
Yeah.
And so it's not out there to harass, it's out there to slow people down, and then the other side of serving and to protect people that are driving on those roads. And it's the same thing with, proactive police work and trying to get drugs off the street. If we stop somebody and remove some heroin or fentanyl from their car, maybe we've saved a life.
Yeah.
So I think it's all back to, again, saying, or keeping the main thing with people and making sure people understand what we're out here doing. So
it's a bummer that you have to do that.
Yeah, it's part of the job.
Yeah.
It's just comes with the territory. So
you got the city and then you have the county.
Yep.
And obviously you have the city of Midland Police, and then you have Midland County.
That's correct.
Is there a jurisdictional boundary there? In other words, does the city guys work in the city and then the county guys work in the county, or how does that work?
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. The city limits are the city limits. A little bit different with the county, though, is the city falls within the county. And the law enforcement center, which is where our road patrol is found. We have the jail out over by Costco on the, I guess, southeast side of town, you'd say.
Never been there, luckily.
Yeah. So we drive, when the guys go out to start a shift, they drive through the city of Midland. And if they see a crime or want to stop a car, they can. They have that jurisdiction.
Oh, they do?
Yeah. Whereas the city doesn't go out into the county to, do proactive work like traffic control and stuff like that. The city will go out and help us if we need them. Depending if there's an emergency situation or something like that, the city's there to support us. But that's where it's a little bit different. The county can actually patrol and work in the city.
So as sheriff, obviously you gotta campaign, you got to win an election, and then you
Yes.
become sheriff.
Yes.
What are your day-to-day duties? Are you scheduling? You're creating? I assume as a leader, you're creating priorities. You're creating initiatives. What kind of things does a sheriff do on a weekly basis? What would a schedule look like?
Well, there's going to be a learning curve if I win, obviously. But in talking to the current sheriff and the past sheriffs and seeing the current sheriff's schedule at times, he attends lots of meetings. I think he's asked to be on different boards throughout the city and county that are related to the sheriff's office and the work that we do. Again, I'm all about empowerment and delegating things that can be delegated. So, yeah, get elected and get in and see some things that maybe the sheriff absolutely needs to be at and other things that our office needs to be at, and maybe we can have somebody fill in those gaps because you can't be everywhere.
Yeah.
Again, the sheriff being an elected position who reports to the people who vote him or her in, I think it's important that the sheriff needs to be out of the office, be seen, be out in the public. I still, have a life as well. I'm married. My wife's got a busy job at Dow. She's a trustee on the Meridian Board of Education. We have 2 busy boys that are into everything. So there's got to be a human element to still being the sheriff. But fortunately for me, I love people. I love connecting with people, forming new friendships, getting to know people from different walks of life. And so in between meetings, managing the, overall office and empowering those folks underneath to do the more day-to-day stuff, that's what I think it probably will look like. And then obviously with the learning curve would be tremendous. So there's going to be a few months of sitting back and listening and learning. So
21 years on the force. What's the craziest thing you run into?
So road patrol, during that time, we had a new drug arrive. Oh, this is probably 15 years ago. It was called bath salts.
I remember.
And
Jeez.
that was crazy. A crazy time for law enforcement. Something we had never seen before, at least in my career. People's behaviors, some of the calls we're dealing with, and I have some stories from that time that probably shouldn't be shared in this capacity.
Oh boy.
Yeah. So, and then in my current role as detective, like again, Midland is a safe place to live. We're not inundated with homicides. Those are, when we do have them, those are very interesting to work. They're very involved, very detailed. It's not like TV. It's not like turning on CSI or anything like that. So,
what's different?
The process, the speed of which things are done.
Faster or slower?
Much slower.
Much slower?
Much slower. Like CSI packs an entire investigation into a 45-minute episode, right? And we have, between working with other agencies like the Michigan State Police, Crime Lab, things of that sort, it takes time. And we work slow and diligent with those investigations. So
Sure. If there was a murder in Larkin Township tonight, would you potentially be working that?
Yes.
Would you by default be working it, or you'd be one of a few people or a department?
So our office currently has 2 detectives.
Okay.
I'm one of them. So likely if we had that scenario,
Sure.
we'd probably both be there,
Yeah.
to be honest with you. Yep.
That's pretty interesting. Can we talk about that?
Sure.
You get a call. Obviously, this never happens, but knock on wood. There's been a murder in Larkin Township. Somebody calls the police. I've seen a murder. You get the call. You and your partner go out and you do investigations. You talk to witnesses. You gather evidence. You open a file, and then you start investigating that.
Yes.
And you chase leads.
Yes.
And then eventually you identify a suspect.
Yes.
And you gather evidence. Then you eventually indict, is what they call it, make an indictment or an arrest, I guess.
Yeah.
An arrest. And then there's an indictment. And then there's a trial. And at which point you would testify as a prosecuting witness?
Yes.
Dang,
You're
that's
pretty versed in this. Yeah. You must be a crime scene TV show watching guy or
that's
something.
literally everything I know about it.
Yeah. No, you are spot on. You just followed it from start to finish right there. I mean, there's a
Wow.
lot in between there, but yes, that's how it would work. Yes.
So, what other investigations do detectives in Midland County work on a regular basis other than murder, since there's not a lot of those? Drugs, abuse?
Yeah, we get into some drug investigations, the bigger ones, the bigger quantities, and then sometimes there are other incidents that are spin-off of those drug cases that lead to more serious things.
Sure.
So we have those. Like I'd mentioned before, we deal with sexual abuse cases more frequently than I wish, but those are something that we deal with. The vulnerable adult embezzlement cases are something that we've been dealing with a lot more recently.
And you prosecute those.
Yes, those get prosecuted.
So again, let's try my skills here. The district attorney becomes aware of a complaint, and they decide whether they want to prosecute or investigate, or how does that work? You get a call comes in, says, "Hey, sheriff, I'm getting taken advantage of. My grandson has embezzled money from me. Can you help?" Is that how it starts? A call.
Sometimes the vulnerable adult exploitation cases generally more times than not come in through Adult Protective Services, which is an arm of the Department of Health and Human Services.
So they call into some channel or hotline to get help, and then
Yes.
it gets referred to you.
Yeah. So the state of Michigan has an intake center called Centralized Intake. Banks are now mandatory reporters. If a bank sees suspicious activity, they're mandated to report it to Centralized Intake in some scenarios.
Wow.
And we'll end up getting an email with the referral. Sometimes a local APS office is involved, sometimes not.
What's APS?
Adult Protective Services.
Okay, got it.
And then, we go from there. We strategize our investigation, which could entail, it will entail interviews, but search warrants, things of that sort, and then package it up into a report, and then it gets shipped over to the prosecutor's office.
Interesting.
District attorney is what you're thinking of, but it's referred to as the prosecutor's office at the local level. And then they can decide if there is probable cause to believe that a crime was committed, and then somebody can be charged. They don't always get charged, but sometimes they do. So
That's wild. That's an interesting process. There's one district attorney for Midland County.
there is one elected prosecuting attorney,
Okay.
J.D. Brooks.
Okay,
And
yeah,
then
yeah.
within his office, there are several assistant prosecutors.
I see. So
Yes.
he's
I
the
believe
leader.
there's 6 or 7 off the top of my head.
And any of those have the authority to open an investigation or do an indictment?
Yes. Well, depending on how he has
it.
his office structured, he has attorneys that handle felony cases, and then attorneys that handle misdemeanor cases. And whichever attorney it lands with will review it. A lot of times, there is dialogue and discussion between the detective bureau and the attorney, and then they'll come to a decision as to whether or not a case should be charged or not. And that's true for all cases. That's not just the vulnerable adult side of things.
Interesting.
So yeah.
Another thing that Midland County Sheriff does is rental evictions. That's probably not your most fun job.
I haven't done one of those in a long, long time. But yeah, that is something that a sheriff is charged with. That's a little bit different than a police chief. Is a sheriff works directly with the courts to serve things like evictions.
Yep.
Which is never fun.
Nope.
Especially if there's a family that is still residing in the house and they fell on hard times and they just can't make ends meet.
Yep.
That's not something that anybody enjoys doing. Sometimes, as you know, the properties are vacant, and that makes things a little bit different. But that is something that the sheriff is charged with in his duty.
It's very rare that an eviction gets that far. Usually it's handled through the courts or privately. But it is really the last step of the eviction process in Midland County is if the tenant refuses to vacate after they've lost their court case, or whatever point in the process, if they refuse to leave, they are eventually escorted out of the property by the sheriff. So it's obviously not anything anybody wants to have happen, but it does occasionally happen, and it is a service that the, the sheriff
Yes.
does handle.
Yes.
Yeah, I've been on the rental side of that once or twice. It's very, very not pleasant, and it's not a fun thing to have happen. But once in a while, you have somebody that won't leave, and they're taking advantage of the system, and that's when it comes into play.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. That's correct.
All right. When is the election? And if I'm a voter in Midland County, what do I need to know to be able to vote?
Well, first, get registered. If you're not registered, I mean, I can't think of a more civic duty, regardless of my campaign, and would love to have your support. But there's other issues that are going to be on the ballot, other U.S. congressional seats, state level seats. So I think that we owe it to our country to vote. The primary is August 6th, and the general election is November 5th. I believe in Michigan that early voting, absentee voting begins at the end of June. So, I mean, we're in mid-April already, so it's closing in quickly. So I would challenge people or ask people to go out and vote and, make your opinions known and see what happens.
In Midland County, is it an open primary, or is it by party, or how does it work?
It's by party.
Okay.
As of today, I'm the only individual who has filed papers for the sheriff race. I am running as a Republican, but yes, it's a straight ticket primary.
And you're going to represent everybody, right?
That's correct. Nothing more important to me than that. It is, I understand, for this position, for this race, you need to pick a party. However, if elected, I want everyone to know that I'm here to serve everybody. It doesn't matter left or right to me. There's a job to do, and doing the job is more important than having the job.
As the sheriff, you have to protect the youth. What are some things that you're going to focus on as sheriff to protect our kids in school?
Well, I have a unique perspective on this because, again, of being a parent of two young boys that are 12 and 15, and both are provided with cell phones. They've shown that we can trust them with them, and it's safe, and we want them to be able to get a hold of mom and dad. But one thing I would like a message to go out to parents. You had said you're a young parent yourself, Logan, is educate your children on the dangers of cell phones. And what I mean by that is whether you allow your children to have social media is something that you can decide as a family. But if you do decide to allow them to have it, go through the application and see what the risks are. Educate yourselves before you let them dive in. We like to think that we live in a world where nobody wants to harm a child, but unfortunately that's just not the case. And sometimes kids can get themselves caught into or get themselves in trouble solely because they don't know any better. They're kids. I'm sure you remember what it was like being 14, 15, 16 years old. I do. And, brains are still developing, growing, and you're certainly learning more as you go. And we need to do everything we possibly can to educate our children on the dangers of cell phones. And there's a lot of good that come from phones. Like I said, I like being able to see where my boys are. I like to know I can get a hold of them if I need to, and vice versa. But at the same time, I know that there's some people that exist that have some bad intentions. And the boys and I and my wife, we've had many, many conversations about do's and don'ts with phones, what to look for, when to come to us if there's a problem, and things of that sort. So I would really challenge and empower parents to please educate yourselves on the dangers of some applications and talk to your kids about what they should do and what they shouldn't do with their phones, because it can lead to problems.
What is a problem it can lead to?
Pictures, inappropriate pictures. is one thing. Again, there are people out there that could be cross country who are posing as a 19-year-old, male, but really they're a 45-year-old. And, they may talk through text messaging or different means, and then all of a sudden that person could show up here in Midland because, here this child thinks that they're talking to another person their age, and next thing they know, a 60-year-old grown adult shows up and says, surprise, I'm not who you think I was.
And sometimes they try to lure the children to meet them.
Sometimes.
That's the ultimate worst case end game, right?
Yes.
So you have to teach your children to identify the potential risk of communicating with somebody you don't know, somebody who's a stranger, somebody who appears to be somebody your age, but may in fact not be.
Absolutely.
And so that requires proactive communication with your children to explain the risks of that.
Yes.
That's hard to do for many parents.
Yes, it is hard.
Which is frustrating because they need to do it. And it's a real risk these days that maybe, 20 years ago we didn't have this kind of concepts because there was no phones that kids were using.
And they're not going anywhere. Cell phones are here to stay, and they certainly have their place in society. But, as it relates to law enforcement, when I first started, we didn't have I don't think I had my first cell phone until I was 23. Maybe younger, but it wasn't much younger.
That's wild.
But, just since in my career, since it started, the technology side of investigations has completely changed, and we need to be able to adapt and change with it, and, stay up on themes and things that kids are doing and, some bad people are doing, and stay on this. And we owe it to the public to help educate them as well. These are things we're seeing. This is how you can help educate your child.
Yes.
No, I don't think people necessarily want anybody in blue or brown to have to come in and lecture their child on what to do and what not to do with their phones. I'd much rather see you or other parents do it themselves.
How much of bullying is handled by the school system versus the law enforcement? At what point does it cross over into a law enforcement issue?
So fortunately in the county and the city, in the county we passed a millage, or the voters passed a millage to put a school resource officer in Bullet Creek, one in Meridian, and one in Coleman. And those three gentlemen that are working those roles have done so for several years and do a fantastic job. And I say that because I know I'm not naive to think that there aren't issues occurring in the school, but they're not making their way to the detective bureau. Some do, but they do a fantastic job of being role models and being a place where kids can go, a person where kids can go talk and maybe, nib something in the butt at the school level. So I think the schools in the county, at least, work very closely with our SROs if there are those issues, and it elevates to a law enforcement issue, if you will, rather than pulling somebody in off the road who they may not know. Our resource officers, will step in and take it from there. So
they'll mediate and help?
Yes, that's a big part and a big role of the SRO.
I never knew that was part of the Midland County Sheriff's Department. That's part of your umbrella of people that you manage.
Yes. Yep, we have three.
That's wonderful. Why don't we have more?
Money? Money.
Okay.
I mean, it's should we have one in every school? Yeah, in a perfect world, I would say we have a school resource officer in every school across America.
Are they armed?
Yes.
What would it take to have every school in Midland have an armed resource officer on campus every day?
Again, it's budget. That's what it boils down to. Our three SROs are full-time sheriff's office employees, are actually 20-year guys or more, came by way of road patrol and then took those roles. And so they're full-time, real certified police officers, but it takes a special personality because they're not just a body, you know. And again, I say this as a parent because I have 2 boys in the Meridian district, and our deputy that's out there isn't just a person that, you know, is shoved into the school and doesn't talk to anybody. He's part of the school.
Right.
Everybody knows him at the school, and I feel good, you know, when I'm at work or wherever I am during the day, knowing that he's there in the event of an emergency or something bad happening. So again, it just comes down to it's government, you know, and money. And I would love to see us have a deputy in every school in the county. And I'm sure the same is true for the city of Midland. It's just what's realistic and how could we get there? I don't know the answer to that.
Well, there have to be several dozen schools in Midland County. I don't know exactly how many, but there's dozens, right? Dozens and dozens, 2, 3, 4 dozen schools between elementary, middle schools, high schools, private schools.
Yes.
20, 30, 40, 50 schools. I don't know. So that would mean 20, 30, 40, 50 additional resource officers, all of whom are drawing a full-time salary.
Yes.
Benefits, all the things associated with a full-time government position. That's millions of dollars.
Yes.
So with the existing budgets that Midland has, is there a way to reallocate resources to that, or would they have to generate new revenue?
I'm not sure. Again, in my current role, I don't deal with the budget. So I don't know the answer to that. So unfortunately, I'm not sure. There are grants, you know, what can we look at as other possible funding possibilities, things of that sort. So
is it a priority for you to have more senior resource officers in schools?
yes.
Is that something that you think you can make happen?
I don't want to overpromise and underdeliver. One thing that I'm telling the people that I've been making contact with and speaking to over the last month is the one thing that I can promise is to ask questions and listen to understand, not listen to reply necessarily, but I am going to and intend on asking questions to understand why we do some things the way we do, and we'll see where that gets us. You know, I think as a parent, again, myself, I don't know any more valuable resource than our children, and doing everything we can to protect them. And, you know, the voters of Midland years ago decided, yeah, we agree with that. And we have made huge strides in that regard. And like I said, we have one for Coleman schools and Bullet Creek schools and Meridian schools. And then the city has several, 6, 7, I'm not sure, SROs as well. And they're just vital in this community and for our children. So,
well, I appreciate the honesty of that answer. It was not a political answer, which I appreciate, and I think the voters are going to appreciate your straightforward approach to handling these issues with real, honest integrity. I appreciate that.
Yeah, you bet.
Tell us more about your background. You're from Sanford?
I am.
Tell us about.
Well, I'm from Hope.
You're from Hope.
I'm from Hope. But
right.
yes, a transplant to Sanford, but still
Okay,
in
cool.
Midland County. Yeah.
So, what has your experience been growing up in Midland County, from young till today?
Yeah, it's just fantastic. A kid's dream, really, growing up out in Hope Township, surrounded by family. My Fillmore side of my family is Centennial farmers, or they're no longer into farming, a little bit of cattle, but grew up out in the country where I formed my love of hunting and everything outdoors and sports, and the importance and value of having a big family that is all supportive of one another. Did transplant to Sanford a little later in life when I was still a kid, and went to Meridian, which is very close to my heart today. It's a place I'm very involved in. My wife's from Midland, but we chose to make this our home and place that we wanted to raise our family and work, and just couldn't ask for more in that regard.
What do you like the most about being a dad?
I think being a role model. I like to feel that I'm a good role model to my boys. I'm a child at heart at times. My wife would probably attest to that.
Well, I've been in a group text with you. You're a lot of fun.
Yeah.
You're a funny
If you're
guy.
not having fun, then what are we doing, right?
No doubt.
And so I just everything about my boys' lives and trying to guide them, tough love at times, making them earn their way with things, and like Kellen, my little baseball player. He's already worried about where he's going to hit this weekend in the lineup.
I love that.
And I said, well, where do you think you're going to hit? And he said, probably ninth. And I said, yeah, you're probably right. And but I want him to, earn his way.
Yeah.
And move up the lineup and things like that. So it's just, there's nothing I don't like about being a dad. It is my greatest responsibility. And it's been fantastic. Time flies. I mean, we're going to have a driver here in November. It's crazy to think about. He's ready for it. And, but yeah, that's my most important role.
Me too. Well, Scott, good luck. And thank you for being on the Talk Midland podcast.
I appreciate it.